Good morning, students. Let us continue with the story Dr. Heideggers Experiment. There, in fact, stood the four glasses brimful of this wonderful water, the delicate spray of which, as it effervesced from the surface, resembled the tremulous glitter of diamonds. Author writes, in fact, in reality, stood the four glasses. There were four glasses on the table, brimful of this wonderful water. To the verge, these glasses were filled with that wonderful water from fountain of youth, the delicate spray of which, as it effervesced from the surface, the bubbles which were coming up from the surface resembled the tremulous glitter of diamond. They were shining as if diamonds shine. It was now so nearly sunset. The time was that of the evening, that of the sunset, that the chamber had grown duskier than ever. That particular study room of Dr. Heidegger has become dark, dusky because of the evening time. But a mild and moon-like splendor gleamed from within the vase. A very soft light. It was coming out from the pot, from the jug, and rested alike on the four guests and on the doctor's venerable figure. That reflection of the light was falling on the faces of the four guests of Dr. Heidegger as well as on the face of Dr. himself. He sat in a high-backed, elaborately carved oaken armchair. Doctor, who was sitting there, a high-backed chair, elaborately carved, very beautifully carved. It was made up of oaken wood, with a great dignity of aspect that might have well befitted that very father time. He was sitting like a philosopher there, with a particular pose of a serious person, and this pose befits to the age to which he belonged, to the old age, whose power had never been disputed save by this fortunate company. The power of the age, the experience of the age cannot be challenged. It is undisputable. But whereas the reaction of these four friends were concerned, it was just opposite to that. Even while quaffing the third draught of fountain of youth, they were almost awed by the expression of his mysterious voices. Even while they were drinking the third draught of this water from the fountain of youth, they were almost awed by the expressions of his mysterious voices. All these four candidates, they were a bit frightened to look at the face of Dr. Heidegger that seemed mysterious. But the next moment, the exhilarating gush of of young life shot through their veins. At the very next moment, the reaction was there. The current of young life, it passed through their veins. Their high-spiritedness was there. They were now in the happy prime of youth. They were now once again young, properly young. Age, with its miserable train of cares and sorrows and diseases, was remembered only as the trouble of a dream, from which they had joyously awakened. Age, the impact of old age, with its miserable train of cares, with its series of sufferings, problems, sorrows, and ailments, diseases, was remembered only as the trouble of a dream. Now it was remembered as if it was a problem for a moment, from which they had joyously awoken, from which now they have awoken. The fresh glows of the soul, so early lost, and without which the world's successive scenes had been but a gallery of faded pictures, again threw its enchantment over all their prospects. He writes that the fresh glows of the soul. There was a freshness in the soul as well, so early lost, which was lost previously, and without which the world's successive scenes had been but a gallery of faded pictures. Without that shine of the soul, the scenes or the sceneries of the world, they were as if faded pictures. Again through its enchantment over all their prospects. Again they became alive, they became enjoyable. They felt like new created beings in a new created universe. They felt as if they are newly born human beings in a newly created world. We are young, they cried exultingly. The four guests of Dr. Heidegger, they started shouting, we are young, and they were shouting with full of joy. Youth, like the extremity of age, had effaced the strongly marked characteristics of middle life. Youth, these features of young age, like the extremity of age, had effaced the strongly marked characteristics of middle life and mutually assimilated them all. It seemed as if all the marks of the old age, they were removed, and all the features of young age, young life, they were again there. They were a group of merry youngsters. Now, these four candidates, they were in the form of a group who were young people as well as happy people. Almost maddened with the exuberant frolicsomeness of their years. They were all they were behaving almost like mad people with exuberant frolicsomeness, as within their or with their happiness they were behaving like children. The most singular effect of their gaiety was an impulse to mock the infirmity and decrepitude of which they had so lately been the victims. The most singular, most peculiar effect of this water was the effect caused by the water in the form of happiness was an impulse to mock it. They just wanted to laugh at the infirmity and decrepitude. Infirmity, the weakness, disableness, of which they had so lately been the victims. When they were old, they were the victims of these things. They laughed loudly at their old fashioned attire. As they looked at themselves, they laughed loudly when they watched their dress, whatsoever they were wearing at that time. The wild skirted coats, the flapped waistcoats of the young men. Now they were young. The dresses were that of the old people. Whether it was skirted coat, whether it was waistcoat, looking at it, they started laughing. And the ancient cap and gown of the blooming girl. Now cap, which was there on the head of widow Wycherley, looking at the cap, looking at the gown, which was a dress of the old age. Now they started reacting, laughing after looking at it. One leaped across the floor like a gouty grandfather. One out of them jumped and walked flexibly as if an old person walks, suffering from the joint pains. One set a pair of spectacles astride of his nose and pretended to pore over the black letter pages of the book of magic. Another, he put a spectacle on the nose and just behaved as if he was thinking something, as he was looking on the book of the magic, like a serious person. A third seated himself on an armchair. The third one was sitting in an armchair and strove to imitate the venerable dignity of Dr. Heidegger. He was just trying to copy the dignity, the seriousness of Dr. Heidegger. Then all shouted. Then all the four guests, they start shouting. Then all shouted mirthfully, happily, with joy, and leaped about the room. They started jumping around the room. The widow Wycherley, if so fresh a damsel could be called a widow, tripled up. If it is going to be proper to call a young lady widow, the reaction of that lady was that she tripled up to the doctor's chair. She walked quickly towards the chair of the doctor, with a mischievous merriment in her rosy face. Now her face was shining, it was rosy in color as she was young, and with an intentional smile, she went to the chair of Dr. Heidegger. Doctor, you dear old soul, cried she. Doctor, dear one, you are an old soul. Get up and dance with me. I am young, I am eager to dance, and I request to you, just get up and company with me in a dance. And then the four young people laughed louder than ever. As it was uttered by the lady, the three young people, they laughed more louder. To think what a queer figure of poor old doctor would cut. What was the reason behind this particular laugh? They thought how the doctor would look when he would dance with a young lady. We shall continue in our next lecture. Mark it here. Thank you very much.